All right, we're getting closer and closer. 2L, checking debtors against authorized credit risk. So, Bright Ideas has an internal control procedure that requires that every customer be given a credit limit and be validated, authorized to receive or to take products out on credit. Otherwise, everything needs to be paid in advance. So, what we're going to do is we're going to validate that this procedure has been followed. And we are going to check that by importing a file that unfortunately is not in a database or a spreadsheet style. It's coming in, it's going to be presented to us in a report. And that is very common for us to get information from our clients or from the companies that we're auditing in not the preferable format that you wish you had. An idea is very powerful in being able to recognize some of these reports or some of these paper documents and OCR that or recognize the characters and to be able to import that information into your analysis. So we'll start by going into our file that is the customer text report. So let's go back to IDEA. And if you remember how to get data, we are going to our home and then we're going to add something to our desktop. And this is not going to be a text file. This is going to be a print report or an Adobe PDF file. And where is it at? It should be in our source files libraries. If you do not have it there, go ahead and grab it from your zip file, extract it, and put it under your accounts receivable audit project files under the source files library. So it can always be in there. So we're going to open that and press next. So what I'm going to get is a text document that has a bunch of data that's semi-organized. So the way IDEA works is we got to let it know that starting with character 5 or space number 5 all the way to space number, let's say 9, you're going to have an account number. So we got to be careful because we have to make sure that whatever space we define is consistent across the rest of the report. And then IDEA is going to do a really good job of, or it will try to identify the records by following the same pattern. And then we'll say this is a name, this is the address, and this is a credit limit. So we'll let it know that is in case the way it works. Let's get started then. So let me start by selecting this line item. So this line is a typical sample line. I'm going to create a standard layer, which basically tells IDEA how to recognize this information. So first, we will start with this layer, and then I'm going to add a field here. And the next thing we need to do is let IDEA know that anytime it finds a group of characters or numbers that look like character and a bunch of numbers, to go ahead and start to recognize that as a new record. So let me create a trap that says this is a text number, and then let me create another trap that says this is numeric. Control U. So this is a number, right? And that's basically it. So now let's see if that works. So one of the things that I did though, when there's an error, and the reason why I have an error is because I have an empty space, and I made that mistake. When I select the layer, I need to look at the beginning of the text, at the line where you actually have text, and I had an empty line. So let me create a standard layer again, and then now I can see that IDEA will recognize that, and I can do control. Well, let me just do a trap that is text, or this could have been a text trap, and then this would have been a numeric trap. And then now I'm telling IDEA, by the way, anytime you see a character and 3 numbers, that means this is the beginning of a new account. So go ahead and highlight the text next to it and consider them to be an actual field. Now, what happened here, hopefully that, yes, it's done appropriately. Hopefully that's the case, but I may need to make sure that these two numbers are not considered to one, and it's fine. It's fine because I'll know that that's IDEA will know. So all of them are highlighted, right? Once they're highlighted, let's see what the exercise is asking us to do. So now we have to highlight the account number information. And by doing so, it's automatically gonna try to create a field. In this case, the name that I'm supposed to use would be account number. So let me use this as an account number. So the name of the field, it would be an account number. And it's saying that it will start at character space number 5, and it will be a field of four spaces, and that accounts for, be careful because sometimes you may have an account that's bigger than that, but if we know that the biggest account has a width of 4 at the most, let me see what else do I need to do with that. Nothing else. The next one is going to be my customer name. So my customer name will start with Dan, and I'm going to push it all the way to this side. In fact, let me move this to the beginning. So I'll start with this letter. So starting with that space in the document. So if you count the number of space until you got to the letter D, you would be in space number 23. And then the width, I put 28, but I can make it smaller, if you will, to 28. I'm going to call this not Dan, but I'm going to call it customer name or cust_name. And that's it. Then I'm going to highlight the street address. In this case, I'm going to highlight it all the way to this space. I think that's sufficient. Let me make sure that's the case. All right. So this is customer name. This is address. So let me make sure that I do address starting with space number 57. So that's great. And the actual width will be 33. I guess I'm being a little too aggressive, so let me bring it down to 33 to make sure. Otherwise, I would be going into the credit limit space. So that's great. And then I want to make sure that this is a multi-line. Otherwise, it would just select the first thing, right? Auden Shaw, this thing. But I want to make sure that anytime you see this field, that you grab a bunch of lines and end the field on you want to end the field once you see a blank space, basically. So that's what we're doing right now, ending the field when we see a blank space. All right. Sometimes there's not going to be one, so we got to be careful with that. Let me see what other options. Well, I could have said 5 lines total, but then it would give me some spaces. So let's use the blank space tool. All right. The next field would be the amount, the credit limit amount, and that's going to be run from left to right. Be careful because some of those may be bigger. So let me see what is the name that I'm supposed to use, credit limit. And it's numeric, starting with 95. So this is credit limit starting with space number 95. And that's going to be of an actual width of 7 numbers. This is not multi-line, and just leave blank, and that's it. All right, so let's scan for errors then at this point. So we have scan for errors. It won't let me. Just to remove all traps, let's go ahead and save layer. Once we save the layer, then I can scan for errors. And there was no validation errors in the report. I can actually see the records. And so that's going to start doing the records right away. Now, I don't like that, all of that space. I want to trim it. So I need to go back and change that in a minute.
Okay, well, we'll see how that looks once I import it. So let me just save the template. I'm going to save this as customer template in my import definition, customer. Then I'm going to import the data to IDEA. Proceed with import. And I think that's basically it. Let's see if that is in fact case. So we're looking at importing this, make sure that this is sales customer master. So it's a customer master. I generate the field statistics. And there's my customer master. There it is. So that's going to be a different database. When I look at this, I should be able to find the control. And I'm not going to worry so much about the spacing here for now. Let me make sure that that is not the case. Yeah, for now, I don't worry about
this bunch of space. I should have trimmed it, but it's all right. So my control total, let's go ahead and make this the credit limit. And I've been told that should match my $1,595,000. So $1,595,000 should be our credit limit for all of our customers, and that matches. So I should be in good shape. So this is the data. Now I want to see if this data matches my accounts receivable. So now we're gonna look at my balance. Let me close this, and I'm going to look at the balance by customer and my customer masters. Let me view, let me have a horizontal view of both, so I could pretty much see them one at a time, or I could create a query that will provide me with a view that can match and tell me which records are not matched. So I can go back and follow the analysis and join the databases in that regard. So let's go ahead and do an analysis and do a join. That means that we're joining the two sets. Now I'm going to use my primary to be the balances by customer. So I was not selecting the right one. Let me do this again. I need to select the balances by customer first, and then I'm going to use my customer map because I want to see all of them, and then I could see which records do not have a matching authorization credit limit, or if they're not even on the database, right? So I'm going to use balances by customer as my primary database. So I select it first. And then I'm going to use the second database to be the customer master. So the way I do that is by selecting which field is the right one. So these are all the fields that I'm going to show. And then here, my join type would be created like this. All right, so let's select the second database. Oh, I was showing this on the side. So this is my customer master, would be the secondary, right? So this is balances by customer and the customer master. And let's use the match. So my primary is going to be my account number, and the secondary should be by account number as well. And then I want to make sure that I could do a left join, right join, or outer join. In this case, we're going to use, why don't we just use what the assignment calls, which is all records in both files. I could have just done the records with no secondary match, and that would tell me which balances by customer do not have an authorization. But let's analyze them both. And so here it's done. I can see the statistics. I'm going to see the number of records, right? And then I'm going to see some transactions that are not going to have an authorization, like this P009 and this P10 do not have an authorization, or this particular customer, James Bond, well, it does not have any transactions. So we can go on and on and on. So let's go find out the customer balances. Let's go see which databases are in fact not matched, and that would be done in the history. We can look at the joint database, and that's going to give us those numbers. There's 101 records if you put both databases together, the both views together. 50 transactions or 50 customers in the secondary file. I mean, 50 customers here do not have transactions or balances on the accounts receivable. That's great. It could be that they've been paying on time. They don't even, or they pay everything cash, even though they're authorized to use a credit or they may just be clients that are dormant. But we should be more concerned about the 14 records or the 14 customers that have accounts receivable balances but do not have an authorization to be provided such credit. All right, so how do we create an extraction then? So let's go back to the data, and we could do this by doing a direct extraction by looking at this joint database. Let me see how we're supposed to call this. We're supposed to call this balances and credits. Aren't we supposed to? Customer balances and credits. So let's go ahead and name this customer balances and credits. Let's rename it. Let me close it. Let me rename this customer balances and credits. All right. So let me open it again. I can delete this now, and this one too. I'm not concerned with that. So out of these transactions, let me start by extracting those records that do not have an authorization, right? Those 14 transactions that do not have an authorization. So the way I'm going to do this is by doing a direct extract. So I'm going to do a direct extract. I'm going to call this, oops, let me go back and call this. What are we going to call this? We're going to call this, just going to tell us how to name it. Well, let me just say what it is. Customer account receivable without authorization. So that would have been a finding for the audit, right? We have clients that have accounts receivable, yet we don't have an actual file. So the way we can do this is we can just say, give me those records that have a blank account number. Why is that? So let me cancel this real quick and show you. Those account numbers are going to be the account number. The first account number is going to be that account number that was on the primary database. So the primary database was in fact the customer balances, or balances by customer, right? So we are going to have those 51 records right here. The rest of the data shows all of your master files, which are 87 records. So if you're looking at account number 1, that is the unique identifier for the customer master authorization file. So in essence, those records in this query that do not have an account number 1 means that that information does not exist, meaning that the customer master did not have a record that corresponded to that account number. So that's what we're doing here. We are doing a direct extraction, and we're going to call it, once again, ARs without authorization. We are going to just select the account number. That's a function, by the way. So this is pretty much like Excel. This is at instead of equal. It's blank to activate the actual functions that IDEA has. And then at this point, I got to find the field. So the field that I'm going to look for is the account number 0, account number 1. And then I close the parentheses, validate and close. And that's it. I'm going to say accounts without authorization. Those are 14 accounts that have a bunch of records, right, of accounts receivable. Some of them are pretty high, that were not authorized to create that. And that should be in our findings. The next thing that we are going to do is a direct extraction for those that do not have transactions. So why don't we just do that? Why don't we just go back to this and create a direct extraction? And we're going to say, what are we going to call this? We're going to say customers without, with no receivables, with no. Customers without credit transactions will be the most accurate way. And the way we would do that is, once again, we do the add sign that activates the function menu. and I can say it's blank. So what is blank? This is blank. I want to make sure that I have the account number blank. Close that and press validate and close. So now I've just created an extraction that has the account receivable transactions without authorization, and these include 7 transactions for this client, 7 transactions for that client, and so forth. And this is the total amount of those transactions that have not been authorized. And I can click in there and see all those transactions individually, right? And then I can see whether they were paid or not. And then I can see the customers that are not using their credit. So I may want to see if they are sales in a different database, but that's for management purposes. For audit purposes, we're more concerned with this. All right, I think I've extended this video too long. Let me close it up and have you print both of these together. Most interestingly, I want to see this. So let's print the screen and call it a day. Not so fast, I guess. I am missing one additional item. So let's go back and look at my customer balances and credits. And one other extraction that I'll do is I'm going to do a direct extraction of those accounts, and I'm going to call this exceeding customers with exceeding credit lines, right? So customers that are exceeding their credit lines will be here. And the way we would do this is we would just say, I want to have all of those transactions where my gross amount sum, right, it's greater than my authorization credit limit, my credit limit. And that's basically it, right? So gross amount is greater than that. I'm going to validate and press OK. Customer exceeding the credit limit. So for that, I have about 16 customers that are exceeding their limit. Let me see if there's an actual number. Yes, number of records is 16 with a gross amount of $160. I have $161,000 over the limit. That's more than 10%. That's super material, right? Let's take a look at our field statistics real quick. Yeah, 161. So that matches. So in essence, if my total authorization that I have for my customers is supposed to be 1.5 or $1.595 million, and I have about 10% exceeding, that is very material. And so that's something that we are going to write in our findings as well, that more than 10% that our accounts have exceeded the credit authorization beyond 10%, which could be an additional risk factor that needs to be disclosed to investors, or they need to figure out how to adjust those controls. And I believe that at this point, we are done with that analysis. Let me make sure that I am saving this. Two customers, R25 and R20, have exceeded their credit limits. Let's see. Let's take a look at the positive value. Let's look at this records one more time. Oh, so in fact, there is, of course, 14 of those that did not have an actual credit limit to begin with. So that is a little mischieving, right? Like, so that even though we're supposed to identify those that are exceeding, only 2 of them are in fact exceeding their credit limit. The 14 others include those that did not have a credit limit authorized at all. So it depends on what you want to do. In this case, the exercise calls for us to leave it that way. So let me go ahead and save this and just call it done. So copy paste, print that. I'm sorry. So print this instead of the previous one, and that should be how you demonstrate that you finished 2L.